Hey, I had a request video. Can't remember from who. I'll try to remember the names of the person next time I do it, but it was religion. Boom, just that, religion. And I'll do it, yes, of course. I got a request a couple years ago. Somebody said, "What do you think about the devil?" And I was like, "Motherfucker, I already did that." I got yelled. And he's like, "Dude, no, I'm a fan of yours. You don't get mad at me." I felt really bad. I was sometimes I get like emotional back in the past when I was like really high. And I think that's part of the reason why everybody's going crazy these days is because they're all fucking smoking reefer. And they haven't been doing it for very long, you know? Once it wears off in 5 or 10 years, people will chill out. Anyway, so the question is, what do I think about religion? Just religion. All right, so I'll say, like, what do I think about religion? People think about religion in the year 2020. I watch Young Turks a lot. They used to be like my favorite channel, but not so much anymore. I liked them a lot because I originally liked them a lot because they would show like clips of politicians saying stupid stuff. And so instead of watching the news, just watch the short clips of the politicians being idiots. But like now, a lot of people do that. And I'm kind of more into mainstream news now. But a thing about Young Turks is that they just hate religion. And I think that's kind of like when you have the left versus the right, you know, the right they get pissed off at the left because they're not traditional enough with the religion, and then they like to say just blanket statements about religion, like religion's bad, really, you know, like you hear Cenk Uygur say that on Young Turks, and anybody who says that doesn't understand history. I mean, I hate to say it, but Cenk Uygur is a smart guy. He knows the law and common sense, and I agree with everything that he says politically. Pretty much. I mean, you know, like I'd probably be more about teaching people English in school instead of having Spanish speaking schools funded. And I may disagree with them about that. But yeah, but when it comes to, it's pretty clear that he must not be good at history, like across the board. You're just not good at history. If you're going to say something like religion is bad, that's just, you can't say something is bad that has always played such an important part of society. So I think if you're going to talk about history, you should talk about that since the very beginning, because religion is always going to exist. Like if we had World War III and everybody died, and the only people who survived were just random people who found each other on some burnt out like banana field somewhere, and they had to restart society, the first goddamn thing that they would do is establish a religion and a religious leader. That's the first thing that they would do. They would be like, okay, well, what are we going to do with society? You know, as they're eating their bananas, they're like, well, let's make a house of the people. There you go. That's it. That's your church. Okay, well, what are we going to? Well, we need to teach everybody to be nice to each other. There's your religion. There's no avoiding it. So if you're going to talk about religion, let's talk about it really quickly from the beginning. Whenever you talk about anything, you talk about Rome, because Rome has a very distinct, detailed story of the past from the very beginning and from as far back as anywhere. Rome got started in the year 753 BC. In the year 753 BC, there was nobody in the world was having a detailed story about their country. The whole world was dark. You don't have the history of like Athens and the Athenian philosophers starts in like 600 BC, like a whole 100 years after the beginning of Rome, with Dio or I can't remember, but and then you know Homer was in the 800s BC, which was only 100 years before Rome, but that was just not even written down. That was like the Iliad. So from 750 before that, from 1150 BC, Rome got started. Because when Troy was taken over, Ilias, from the Iliad, the Prince of Troy, went and founded Rome in the 1150 BC. He founded this like, town on the seashore for a little bit, and then they moved up to Alba Longa, and they had Alba Longa for 400 years. And so they actually have a very detailed story of Alba Longa from 1150. Aeneas came and had a fight with the locals. Aeneas died in the fight. The locals teamed up with Aeneas and his people, and then they fought the other locals, and then they started Alba Longa. So, and you don't have anywhere else in the world that has detail like that back to 1150 BC, unless you're talking about the Bible. So Rome, as an actual specific location, by far has way more history than anywhere else. And so let's talk about Rome and the religion. The very first leader of Rome was Romulus. He was the military leader. They were just busy fighting and stuff the whole time, so they didn't really have time to get a society. The very second king, his name was Numa Pompilius, and they recruited him from the mountains. So he wasn't even Roman. He was a Sabinian, and the Sabinians were an outpost. They were a colony of the Spartans, and they recruited him because he was the oldest, wisest man. They just wanted the old wise man to be king. So they brought him down to Rome, made him king, and he proceeded to start the religion. The very second king started the religion. He made their temple, that the fires of the temple are open whenever they're not, and the doors are open whenever they're not at war. If they're at war, the fire goes off and the temple shuts. And so that almost never happens. It's a way for them to try to strive to not have war. And they didn't have war the entire time he was king, so they had the fire open. But he set up the Pontifex Maximus, which was the main priest, which ended up turning into the Pope. He even dressed like the Pope. He set up all of the priests class. They set up a few of their ceremonies and stuff from the very beginning. So, to say that religion is bad is wrong. What you want to say is trying to mix politics and personal gain is bad. Okay, so that's whether it's religion or not. Okay, for example, the worst part of the Catholic religion was in the year 900 from the year 900 until 1450, from when or actually from like 800 until 1450, from when the Pope crowned Charlemagne in the year 800 until 1432, when Gutenberg made the printing press. And that was when the popes got powerful, way too powerful, and that's when the popes kind of turned into a business. So you don't want to blame religion on popes having power. You want to blame fascism. You want to blame greed. That's kind of like blaming government in general across the board. Like, government's bad just because there's people in government who were placed there by ads paid by billionaires who then pay them in there to make them do their bidding so that they can keep the taxes low for the rich. Now, you do hear people say that, oh, government is bad. You get, the anarchists. So Cenk Uygur is basically like an anarchist of religion. It's really stupid. And anybody who says that, because a lot of people like to say that, oh, religion, I'm sick of religion. If you want to fix religion, like your local church and your local religion, you just beat them with more religion, Like I heard Joe Rogan say, you don't shut people down. You don't do cancel culture. If somebody's saying something wrong, just drown them out with more truth. And so, yeah, if you think your religion is going bad or all religion is going bad, shower them out with more religion, not less. Just point out how their religion is bad, because the most right-wing religious people in the world are the least knowledgeable about history. I'll give you an example. I was listening to some two fundamentalist Christians talking about something, and they're talking about devil worshiping and stuff. And he's like, yeah, did you know that the ancient Romans had the devil worshiping ceremony? It's called Lupacabra. They had Lupacabra devil worship, where they would all dress up naked and paint themselves like wolves and run around in the darkness barking like wolves, pretending to be devils. And then the Christians came and finally put an end to the devil worship. Okay, that's just a clear sign of not an understanding of what goddamn history is, okay? Imagine this. Imagine. We have a World War III, and we have to start society from scratch again in the banana field, okay? And somebody says, hey, let's try to reconnect with society. Let's all dress up like wolves and run around and howl like wolves. We're high on mushrooms, and it'll bring us back in time with society. And now, is anybody the next day going to be like, oh man, those devils got into us. We were just about to kill each other. That's horrible, bad. No, of course not. It's just a level of evolution in society. That Lupacabra was just a full moon ceremony that the ancient Romans had in the year 753 BC before they even had a religion. It was necessary to have Lupacabra in order to have Pontifex Maximus, in order to have Catholic Church. It's part of the same thing. Lupacabra to us, to the Catholics, is like you know, a little shrew running through the woods is to a human being. We came out of it. So do we go around going, oh man, shrews, they're so disgusting. They go around and eating their own shit and just sleeping, and then they die after just after a month. Damn shrews, we should kill all the shrews. No, we look at shrews, we go, oh, cute little shrew, we came from the shrew. So that's how you need to look at Lupacabra. Oh, look at Lupacabra, came from Lupacabra. So yeah, the most right wing, you know, southern drawling from Alabama dudes, bumfuck nowhere guys who don't know anything, and Christian, like let's drop some names. Jim Jordan, I can imagine that. When I'm on in my church and we praying toward Jesus, you know, like those guys don't know history. So if you want to get good at religion, just study history, because religion is history. The worst things that religion ever did, I guess, was the religious wars in the 1600s in Germany, where 2/3 of Germans died. It was the Catholics versus the Protestants. No, it was fucking Protestants versus Protestants. It was the Spanish Protestants who were in control of Germany versus the German Protestants and the Habsburgs, and yeah, so that was just ridiculous. But you know, that was just more tribalism and you know, different factions and just people being crazy. Yeah, so I think, you know, if you're going to take a rule from that about religion, it's just keep religion, you know, free and open-minded, and allowing everybody to speak their mind, and not giving too much power to one person. I actually grew up in a religious cult. Since I was born, when I was born, my parents were in a Hindu cult, Oscar Chazo. They were like a Hindu-ish Sufi cult. But then when I was like a baby, when I was like 1 year old, they decided that, and they even had an ashram for the Sufis, that my father owned the building, because my father was in real estate. And then my father converted the building into a Buddhist building when they decided they were all going to follow Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And in like 1974, I was born in 73. And Chogyam Trungpa even actually came to Austin, Texas, and went to my house. There's a picture of him like doing Reiki on my chest, and my brother's there, we're sitting on his lap. And some of the Buddhists even who were part of our Buddhist group then came up to Boulder. And we moved to Boulder because the Buddhist center was in Boulder. And so both of my parents, my mother's father was a 32nd degree Mason and a deacon in his church, but he died of a heart attack at the age of 40. My dad's grandfather was a prominent circuit riding minister in Texas, and then became the preacher at the local church in Tyler, Texas. So, and my father's father, was the treasurer of the Southern Baptist Church for 50 years. And so both of my parents grew up extremely religious families. And both of my parents absolutely fucking hate Christianity, to the point where they're almost like Chingu, like they just hate religion and they hate Christianity, like to a point where their heads are exploding and they can't even think clearly anymore, and you can't even have a conversation with them about history because they're just like so angry. So they saw some like religious, like racist, close-minded stuff that really turned them off, and it made them bounce back and become Buddhist, to the point that they actually became fundamentalist Buddhists, brainwashed fundamentalist Buddhists. My father was the consummate follower. When my mom divorced him and he moved to California, he joined another cult, found another follower who was like his magical leader, and who would tell like stories about how he was magical. Like he fell skiing and cut a huge gash open in his leg and was bleeding and needed stitches, but he used his magical powers to heal his blood by himself. That's my dad. He's a and that's actually was extremely frustrating to me to have a father like that, because I was never allowed to think for myself because I was his son. That meant that I was going to have to be a consummate follower as well, and I was never seen as somebody who was ever able to think for myself, because he couldn't picture himself thinking for himself. And my mother's kind of like that in the same way. So I think the most important thing that you need to do with religion is to keep the leader guy from becoming like the same thing as a CEO of a country, where he gets to just hire and fire whoever he wants, and everybody has to give him money. Because like my parents, my dad, were very loyal followers of the Buddhist church. They donated money. They went up and did the seminaries up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and they went through the whole like gamut, did all the prayers and the 13,000 prostrations. My mom has like back pains from that still, and they invested like $3,000 in an oil well because Chogyam Trungpa said he had magical powers and knew exactly where they needed to drill to get the oil, but they didn't. He guessed wrong, and he said it wasn't his fault. It was actually the people who he told where to go went to the wrong place, of course. And and then my dad was fluent in German because he lived in Germany when he was a teenager and went to like school there and stuff. And so they were going to have like an outreach group to try to like spread Shambhala Buddhism to Germany and stuff. And so my dad was like, "Oh, cool, I'll join that." But then Chogyam Trungpa sent like his friend Tom Bell to go tell my dad, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but you're not allowed. You're kicked out." Because apparently my mom thinks it was because Chogyam Trungpa got pissed off at my dad, because they went out to dinner once because they were going to invest in like land. Even my dad was going to help, I guess, chip in. Chogyam Trungpa, with all the help of his fucking followers, was going to buy land to start some like another like ashram or whatever they call them, Buddhist temple in Canada or somewhere. Anyway, and they went out to eat, and some person, like a group of people, and some person put the check to my dad, like he was going to have to pay. And my dad was like, no, and he pushed the check back in the middle, like they're all going to share. Or at least the two of them were going to share. Obviously not make Chogyam Trungpa pay, but... So I think my mom thinks that Chogyam Trungpa like remembered that and like wanted to get revenge on my dad. And was like, yeah, you're not allowed in the inner group. And so like, how the fuck is that religion? Like, how is that? That's just a goddamn cult. And like, oh yeah, and everybody was like, he was like enlightened. Chogyam Trungpa was supposed to be enlightened, and his son was like my age. His name was Gesar, and you had to call him Sir Gesar. He wasn't just Gesar; he was Sir Gesar. And like, even if you talk about him in third person, you had to call him Sir Gesar. And I mean, nothing against Gesar. He was a chill kid. He was never. He was never really into that. He was never an ego guy. But you're setting up a goddamn system where there's the inner group, like you have the Kalapa court, they all have to serve, and then they don't have to work. And anyway, that all burned down in fucking flames a couple of years ago because he died at the age of 47 because he drank himself to death, Chogyam Trungpa. Oh, and that guy Chogyam Trungpa, he was super creepy. Like, he came to my house once because there's some old guy who was staying at my house, and then there's this guy named Ada Roshi, who is the big Buddhist leader in Japan, who came out here in the summers to like hang out with the Buddhists in RMDC. And so Ada Roshi stayed at our house every summer for like 3 summers in a row because we had a nice big house. And you know, when they stay at your house, you pay for everything. And so like we were the suckers or whatever. But I mean, that was cool because we got to hang out with Ada Roshi. Like I talked to Ada Roshi, just me and Ada Roshi, with Ada Roshi's like, so, you know, assistants there. And I think even my parents were there, but we were having a 2-way conversation and I was like 8 years old. And I asked him every question under the book. I asked him, you know, I remember asking him, because he was telling me all about the different realms. Like when you die, you then become into the heaven realm. But then if you become enlightened, you can go into even a higher heaven realm. And then there's human realm and animal realm. And I was, okay, well, what? I remember asking him, what realm were the dinosaurs? And he goes, well, dinosaurs were animals, weren't they? I was like, oh yeah. He was like, animal realm. I was like, oh yeah, of course, duh. But anyway, Chogun Trungpa went there once, and he was like drunk off his ass all the time. Like his eyes were glazed over, like watery eyes, and he couldn't focus, so you never knew who he was looking at. And he never made eye contact with me, not even once. And I was always standing there looking right at him. I mean, if me as an adult, I would make eye contact with a kid, but I don't think he even saw me. Like he was that drunk. And yeah, he was there for like a half hour or 10 minutes, and somebody boiled wine because he always wanted wine. But so they would boil the wine so that he wouldn't get as drunk because you can boil the alcohol away from the wine. And so when they left, there was all this like foaming wine on the countertop table. And yeah, and once we were up at RMDC and I was hanging out there and I saw him land in the helicopter. I was one of the kids standing right next to the helicopter when it landed. And then everybody was waiting for him to give like his speech or his like guided meditation or whatever. And everybody's waiting in here, like 100 people for like an hour, and he never shows. And then he finally showed, and people had to carry him. He wasn't able to walk, and then he sat down and he passed out, and they had to carry him out. And he didn't say anything, and it was this total disaster. And everybody was like embarrassed. Like I was embarrassed for everybody. I was embarrassed for him and for everybody just for being there. I was like, oh my God. And then he like died the next year. He moved up to Nova Scotia and drank himself to death. And it's kind of sad. Like, I mean, the woman who was taking care of him, who found him dead, ended up having a nervous reaction and it killed herself. And she was only like 35. She was the daughter of my mom's friend. And so like people like, you know, worshiped him and thought he was great. And even my mom, like she tells us today that she thought she was, she regrets being part of that because we were kind of like singled out because we were seen as the rich people, even though we weren't, because we bought a house that was too big for us to be able to afford. And my dad's dad died, and he inherited this big white Cadillac from his father that we used one summer to drive up to RMDC. So everybody saw us in that white Cadillac, and then they saw us with the big house. And also we also owned land up in the mountains, which we had this big party at. It was 38 acres up in the mountains, and I got really drunk. I was like 8 years old, and I threw a wine bottle at my mom, because that was one thing that they encouraged. They encouraged everybody to be drunk all the time, which wasn't good for my dad, because my dad was a raging alcoholic. He drank an entire carton of sake a day on the weekends, my dad, and during the week he would just drink wine all the time because he didn't work. He was living off of rent from his apartment. I mean, his office buildings in Austin until he lost them, and then we ran out of all of our money. But so he never worked the entire time I knew him. He was just drinking all the time, and so it wasn't good for my dad. But so they encouraged that everybody was a drunk, including the kids. They encouraged the kids to drink and do acid and smoke pot and everything too. So I got wasted. I threw a bottle at my mom, and there's this huge bonfire that we were all getting drunk next to. Luckily, nobody fell in it. And then the next day, Chogun Trungpa was out there doing target practice with his like assistants on our land, like down the road. You know, we let him have his whole home house to himself. And, you know, after that, he kicked my dad out of the group. I mean, it was crazy. So we were like kind of, and then I got like singled out in 4th grade in video Buddhist school. And so we actually had to, I got like bullied. Like this one kid I'll drop his name was Noel McClellan. He was like, he wasn't there in 2nd grade, and then I went to a public school in 3rd grade. So when I came back, I was there for 1st and 2nd grade. So when I came back in 4th grade, I was singled out because I thought that I was like one of the cool kids. But since I wasn't there in 3rd grade, I got like demoted. And so like everybody, so this one kid took charge because he wasn't there in second grade. And he was there in third grade. So now he was like, I guess he was threatened. Noel McClellan was big time threatened by me. So he was always like, you suck, everybody hates you. So I was like, all right, whatever. I didn't care. Like, I really didn't care. I was going to play the game. So I went off in the distance and I just sat down I sat down on the parking stump of the cars, just wait for time to go by, I always hated school. School was always just a waste of time. So I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, waiting for time to go by. And of course, those guys come in hot pursuit and they come after me. And he fucking sits right next to me with his friends, throws a rock right in front of me, like pretending that I'm not there, talking amongst each other, because they could rub it in that I wasn't one of the gang if they're doing it right in front of me. So they fucking pursued me. Fucking throws a rock right in front of me. Like, haha, I didn't say anything. So I'm like, oh, okay, so let's do this. So I pick up a tiny little pebble, the same size, and I throw it just in front of him. And I made sure not to get it any closer than he got it to me. So, of course, he went nuclear, jumps up. You motherfucker, you always do that. Fucking attack me, throw a rock at me. And I go, and really calmly, I go, I just did what you did to me, bro. And he's like, no way. I didn't do shit. I didn't throw no rock. You threw the rock at me. We're out of here. That's why everybody hates your ass. And so he walks off and his little fucking minions. I can't remember who they were, who the minions were. But the minions went and followed him. And I was like, okay, that's it, dude. I ain't playing this game anymore. Not if they pursue me. So I told my parents, I'm like, I ain't going back to that motherfucking place. So they actually took me out. They took me and my brother out of the school about 3 weeks before the end of school year. And they put us into another bullshit school, fucking Waldorf, with other kids with problems. So anyways, my point is, if you're in a situation with a cult, then your parents are going to be bullied out of it because they're not the cool kids. And then the kids are going to, it's just bullying. All it is just bullying. So you really, cults with the leader. I mean, I saw the documentary with Osho and the lunacy that he got people to do. Like they were getting violent. They were saying they were walking around town with guns and they were going to shoot people. And then nobody was allowed to say anything but the great leader. And I mean, there definitely has to be a difference between a cult and a religion. Religion is basically a tradition from history from back on when we had. But if we have some great tradition from history, and then it needs to get revamped now, because now the religion is Christianity, which is the greatest religion that ever was. But the problem, because of its principles, which are just to give away to the rich, and to just be a good person, and to just believe in God, right? So that by formula keeps the power structure out of it. But then power structure gets into it, but then we break away from power structure from the Catholic Church and become Protestant, and then we get New Catholic Protestants, American style Protestants, which then turn into cults. So it's like this. It's this constant cycle from being an actual historical tradition of honoring your traditions and your culture to keep people good and in a society, and then kind of slowly becoming more authoritarian into a cult, and then you have to bounce back and become religion again. It's just natural. It's like what Aristotle says about the cycles of politics. Some people found a society, and it's a kingdom at the beginning, but then it turns into an aristocracy, and then it turns into an oligarchy. So then it turns into a pure democracy, which then turns into a tyranny, which then has to turn back into sometimes a kingdom or a aristocracy again. It's just this constant cycle of trying to keep this balance and find this perfect union. That's why when we started the U.S. Constitution, we said this is our Constitution to try to make a more perfect union. It's never going to be perfect, more perfect. That's why we have the room for all of the amendments to add to it. And so it's in constant flux. And so the flux that we do now, the greatest religion that ever was by far, Christianity, has one fatal flaw. Just like how our Constitution, when we first wrote it, had one fatal flaw in the beginning of it, which was that we had slavery, and we had to fix that. Well, the one fatal flaw of Christianity is an actual fatal flaw. It's a flaw that since the very beginning, Christianity was always a finite religion. When you cannot evolve Christianity into Christianity 2.0. You have to kill Christianity and create some new religion. And now I would call it New Age. I would call it like, common sense, or, but it can't be Christianity, because Christianity revolves around Jesus Christ, who was the only Son of God, who was like one person who came down. And that's where religions go wrong, where you have one guy who's a leader, who's in charge of everything. And so you have to break that mold. And so, but yet keep all of the, positive parts of Christianity, the church and the prayers and the songs and the ceremonies, and even your religious leaders. You would just demote Jesus from like some all powerful person who you pray to into just another one of the prophets. And because Jesus never said pray to me or pray in my name. That was what people did in the past. All Jesus said was pray in the name of God. That's actually what the Buddha did. Buddhism is basically Hinduism 2.0. Hinduism back in the day, people were into the talismans and the praying to this guy and buy this guy for this many points. And Buddha came along and said, no, just meditate and you'll be all right, and you don't need a leader. And they're like, oh, right, that's much easier. So it's basically the same thing as Jesus going into the temple and knocking over the money changers in the temple, saying, look, this is a religious place. This isn't, you separate religious and church. And that's where Rome got it right. They separated religion and church. They had the Pontifex Maximus. He's the leader of the religious, but then you have the actual leader, the military leader, the political leader. And it's that way, like everywhere. Like even in shamanistic traditions, you would have the shaman in the tribe. But then you would have your chief, and they're separate. The shaman doesn't get involved in the war and the political stuff, and the chief doesn't get involved in the religious stuff, and you keep it separate. And so that's why we have separation of church and state written in our Constitution, and that's why we have to keep religion out of politics, and that's why we have all these political people, spouting religion, like that idiot Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that people, how dare people pray on the Koran? You best pray on the Bible. And it's like, bitch, it never said in the goddamn Constitution to pray on the Bible. Read it yourself. You obviously never read it. And if you do that, you're making everybody in America a Christian, and you can't do that either. We're a secular country. And Christianity originally wasn't even a freaking secular religion. It was just pray to God. 2,000 years ago, you needed a figurehead, and somebody to follow. But people think differently now, and we're more open-minded. So I think what we need to do with the religion 2.0, we need to get rid of Christianity. We need to get rid of all the churches and just replace them with just the church, and so the Buddhists, the Hindus, and all those other guys go in. Now that makes it kind of complicated because you have certain people who would pay, and they would want to pay for themselves. But like if I was a super rich Muslim, I would invest in a church. I would just call it the church. I wouldn't call it a mosque. I wouldn't call it a synagogue. I would call it a church because that's the only word. Or you just call it the religious center, because now it's not religious, it's not Christian, it's not Muslim, and it's not Jewish. It's just religious. You call it the religious center. And somebody wanted to make a mosque on Ground Zero, and I think the guy even said, no, we're calling it a religious center. And if you keep calling it a religious center, yeah, that's fine, as long as you're not like calling it a religious center just so that you can get your mosque made and then turn it back into a mosque. But so that's what we need to do with the Catholic Church. We need to kill the Catholic Church. We need to Catholic Church needs to sell all of their holdings all over the world back to the local authorities, and then they need to use that money as well as the tourism dollars in Rome to rebuild Rome the way that it was in the past. Rebuild the Colosseum, rebuild the Circus Maximus, and all of the different little theaters that they have, and then turn Rome into basically like a 3D YouTube. All of the YouTubers in the world go to Rome, and they do their little YouTube shows in Rome. If you look at Rome, and I built Rome on Google Earth, you can download it. If you look at ancient Rome from the year 211, there are classrooms everywhere. You have these little half moon areas everywhere, all over the place. The big bath complex, you have these little alcoves, cul-de-sacs of and there's people just giving lessons all the time. So so what you do is you just go to Rome, you sign up for a cul-de-sac, You get a cul-de-sac for a certain allotted amount of time, and you just sit there and you do your YouTube video. You just talk, and you're just your natural YouTube video. And everybody can come and sit there, and they can participate, and it all gets filmed, and it's like YouTube in real life, and it's not just with you. And so everybody gets to know each other and meet each other, and you know, and hang out and meet each other in person. And then you can have physical sports competitions. You know, bicycle racing, horse racing, fighting animals even, because you rebuild the Colosseum, and it's just a entertainment place to bring people together, to have one world society, and you call it the new religion, and you make or New Age religion, and you make it, and you call Rome community, you call it Rome, the community, the capital of the world, you know, and so yeah, in that sense, I think you can save religion by killing religion. Just get rid of religion. I think we do need to destroy all the religions, but at the same time, honor what religions were, and honor the traditions and all the religious traditions. But that means you have to encourage cultural appropriation. You know, because like you would be, when you go to Rome and you be a religious person, or you make your community center, you would show up in church as your preferred religious garb from the past. But what if you identify with a different race? Like in the past life you were black, and you show up at church, you were dressed like an African priest. You know, it should be allowed to do that, just like a black person should be allowed to show up dressed like the Pope. You know, you're just playing, you're just trying to honor the past, and playing, dressing up, and being artistic, and honoring everything, and watering the garden. You know, but if you're going to get mad at somebody for doing cultural appropriation, that's like pouring acid on the garden. You know, that you don't want to pour acid and stop stuff from growing. You want to grow and allow people to express everything, by killing the individual identity of it all. So yeah, you're never going to see me calling myself a Buddhist, or calling myself a Christian, or I think on Facebook I call myself a Sufi Muslim. It's kind of like a joke, because like, who's a Sufi Muslim? Even though that's what my parents were when I was born. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to go back to New Ager. Everybody needs to become a New Ager and not be a Christian anymore, but go back to the church. Keep going to church on Sundays are great, but they need to not call it church, and don't call it the Christian church, or the we're the Baptists, and we're the Protestants, and we're these guys and the Adventists, because when you do that, you're writing into law like what you believe. Oh yeah, well the Adventists believe this, and we have the tradition of the history. It's like, no, but we all in the world have the whole same tradition in the past, even genetically. If you go back 2,000 years, we're all related to each other. So I would never, if somebody said, hey, let's be religious and go to the church, I'd be like, all right, I'll go to your church, but don't call it the this or the that. Call it community center. Call it religious community center. As soon as you have religious community center on the top, and anybody gets to go in there dressed however they want, yeah, I'll go to church, and I'll sing your songs with you, and I'll hold hands, and and I'll preach. I'll get up there and give Bible lessons or whatever, and listen to the dude doing Bible lessons, but not until you make it neutral, because otherwise it's just tribalism. So yeah, that's what I think about religion. Religion is history, and you can't be a proper faithful religious person unless you're a historian. It's the same goddamn thing. It's literally the same thing. Historian is a religion, but not like a bland historian. Like, in the past they did. No, I'm a passionate historian who actually loves everything about history, and wants to continue everything about history, and wants to culturally appropriate everything from history, and try to decorate the modern world with everything from history, including the religion. So because you could use all the religious teachings and traditions and stuff, and extrapolate them out in the future, and make some great future, society that came right out of that. I want to write a story, actually a screenplay of future Atlantis, like when Atlantis never ended, and how they turned out in a utopia, and how it's all, how they don't have a religion, yet they all live with religious morals, and it's all kept in place by their respect for history. So yeah, that's what I think about religion. I say it's good. Good religion is good, but not the cult type of religion, or giving all the power to leader. Okay, so thanks for the request though.